We have been doing well all over everything. Now we got everything back under together. We already did a whole little piece. We're just gonna keep rolling with the punches.
I think we should start over. That's what I was saying. Welcome back, welcome back.
Oh, okay. I'm getting tons of weird reverb.
Well, you might have because my phone was up. I just turned it down.
Oh, I'm hearing loops.
What are you hearing a loop of? What are you hearing a loop of?
Okay, I think I know what happened. I fixed it.
Okay. All right. Well, so
hit me back with it one more time.
I'm gonna do it. Fuck it, we'll do it live. It's all right. It's like last minute. We've got through so many fight cards. I'll be all honest. That was all my fault right there. Nothing to do with the manual. I haven't worked for a living in like 4 weeks and my body's out of sorts. So, okay. 3, 2.
Welcome back to Lat V MMA Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Emmanuel, here best with the best co-host you could ever think of, you could ever hope for. We got Cheney on the boards, keeping it straight out here. It's been a little while since we got on the line. We've had tons of fights. 3 in 8 days, more to come. We just had a good 45-minute conversation about all that. Found out we weren't on air, so hey, we corrected it. It's all good. Now we're back to talk about anything and everything. Fights of the round table, definitely something you guys should be checking out. We didn't have it last weekend, but we will be going live after these Saturday cards. Before all that, how have you been, Cheney, as of late?
I am doing okay. It feels good to be working again. I feel like we haven't been away from here at all because of all the fights that we've had to do and mixed with the fights of the round table. I'm actually glad that we took off. I don't think I could have done it. I was running out of steam. I'm doing okay. Life's pretty fantastic. And maskless.
Here in Florida?
Everywhere. It doesn't matter where it is. I don't listen to Big Brother.
So, ultra quick recap.
All the unsubscribes, I take credit. See, if we're going to have to do it twice, I come in hard the next time.
No.
Sorry, the first one was 1 whiskey.
Truth. We went hard in the paint there for like 30 minutes, and it's just like, all right, restart. But it was a fun weekend. I mean, I can say, no, I've been doing pretty good. Work's been keeping me busy, as has school, but all these fight cards, it just kind of is in like watching tape mode. As soon as those bets are over, I had a little bit of a shitty weekend, 6-12. Ended up having some bad placement on bets. We had highlights coming over Wednesday card. Chimaev, the Dagestani wrestler out of Sweden that we were boasting about here on the show, definitely put in work. Then we also had Lazan over Al Hassan, who was the highlight reel that Dana White got for an apparent reason, and that's for high-level striking. Maybe Al Hassan just kind of gassing after that first round, which he tends to do, though, if he can't get you out of there. Lazan, great chin. There was another couple standout performances. Not the main event. A lot of people thought it was a little bit boring there with a 4-1 type of decision for Calvin Kattar. What would you end up doing?
I didn't think it was boring at all. It just sucked that the amount of decisions in the night, it just led to that one being like, good God. But they were so evenly matched. Calvin Kattar, I do think 3-2 or 4-1. I agree with you there. I'm trying to catch people up for all that conversation. That's where I agree with you there. But he just looked beautiful in that fight. And to handle Ige like that, and then their sportsmanship afterward was like one of the reasons to watch UFC. I loved it.
It definitely was. It was, though, a little tough, though, when Kattar was walking out to his amazing song. And I'm like, It's 1 o'clock. I gotta wake up in 5 hours.
This is what y'all missed. This is what we didn't record and we were just sitting here talking shit. Hey, UFC, you're in Yas. You're doing these at 4 a.m., 3 a.m., whatever. Who knows what time they're doing them. Why did we have to start them so late on a Wednesday? This is crazy. It was ridiculous. I was surprised when I looked at my clock. I was like, 1:30? Or it was like 1 o'clock. And I text Ricky, I'm like, I'm down to do it because I don't want to not show up if anyone's down to do it. I don't want anyone to have to do it alone. But it's late as fuck. It's already 1 o'clock on a Wednesday.
On a work day, work week. So
I got school tomorrow.
Absolutely in there. It was definitely some fun standouts, some really good additions we have into the UFC. But in these post-COVID times, UFC's in a really interesting state. There's a lot of background information going on. Officially, Dana White saying UFC is at the highest it's ever been ever during these times. And all I can think of is these fighters are still arguing about getting paid. We have Jeffrey Neal taking his serving job back during COVID times because he's a top 10 fighter who's not getting paid. How does that make sense?
Jeff Neal's a top 10 fighter?
Yeah, I believe.
What division is he in?
170 pounds?
Huh. I gotta say,
even if in the top 15,
in the 170 right now,
pro,
they are not stressed for Jeff Neal. Like, if I had to even think about, like, 170, I think even if you hard pressed me, I would not. I think he's friggin' amazing. I think he's definitely a UFC caliber fighter. I think he has tons of fights to win. We aren't doing any less cards. It's just, I think there's like a spider web at the top of the 170 that's catching. I think Gilbert Burns is going to get caught up in it. I think
he's already got the next title fight against.
But when is that? And he's ready to go. So imagine being a fighter. I have to rely on you for my next paycheck.
And Usman is officially out for 6 months. Officially, medical suspension.
Yeah, that's where it gets like. Do you want to hurt your chances at the title by maybe taking a loss, or take, a third of your year's pay off? It's kind of crazy. And so Jeff Neal, there hasn't been less fights. I feel like we've caught up at this point. So why isn't Jeff Neal getting a fight? I would say he's being ducked. I think Jeff Neal's a good fighter.
The fact that he's a top 10 fighter and he has to have a daytime job to actually support himself the kicker on the NFL team doesn't have to work. All he does is kick. MMA, like these guys, anybody who's in the top 15, easy. Anyone who's fighting in the UFC should be paid enough to be able to not have to work a full-time job. But wishful thinking. Regardless, we're not here for any of that. That's all semantics.
It bumps me out, though. It makes me. We never even have guests unless we have our other rad ass podcast friends on here. It makes me want Jeff Neal on the show. We should have Leslie Smith and Jeff Neal.
Oh my God, Leslie Smith is gonna get his banned off the internet though.
Why is she QAnon?
Absolutely.
She probably is.
I'm sure she is. I'll put money that she fucking is. So.
I love Leslie Smith. I miss Leslie Smith.
Too.
And if you threw her in at the 135 or even the 125 in the women's division, she would win fights right now in the UFC. Leslie Smith got screwed because she opened her mouth.
Absolutely.
Anyways, okay. Now we can do it. UFC Fight Night, yes, or Fight Island 3, as Emmanuel likes to call it.
I've been labeling it as we're saying 2 and 3. I'm just mixing them all up in there for sure. But we're definitely getting into a 12-card bout. It's going to end up being headlined in a profile bout with División Figueiredo against Joseph Benavidez 2. We all know what down in the first one. This is going to be for a title for all 5 rounds. Everybody made weight. That happened earlier this morning. But you know how we always do it. Here, we start from the bottom to the top, and it's going to start at 265 pounds with Sergey Spivak coming in against Carlos Felipe, the debut fighter. Is a perfect 8-0. He's definitely only actually a month younger. But interesting fun facts that I was hearing about Felipe there. At 14 years old, he was 340 pounds. Got into MMA because he needed to lose weight. He ended up taking a bunch of mixed martial arts and kickboxing, boxing fights, and actually was signed to the UFC over 2 years ago, but popped for steroids and ended up having a 2-year suspension. At the end of that 2-year suspension, UFC let him go. He, in the meantime, fought amateur level boxing bouts. I ended up finding some also grappling footage of him where he's a black belt. This is a very unique black belt that would definitely be on the lower end of black belt levels. I would even say brown belts would give this guy a hard time in some of the matches I saw. But either way, the 25-year-old likes to keep it standing. I honestly would say he has a bit of androgynous head movement in some of the sparring and fight footage he has. Legitimately, it's like for no reason. And then he even gets dropped in some of it, which, okay, maybe I'm being a dick, and everybody gets dropped even in practice. But there's definitely, I think, higher level heavyweights out there than Felipe. I don't know if it's the short notice. I don't know if it's these COVID times or what, but this young man just has an interesting past on him. And Sergey Spivak is definitely UFC caliber. He's got to win in the UFC. The 10-2 fighter here, last losing a decision to Tybura, beating Tuivasa in a submission when he gassed out, losing to Walt Harris, which really doesn't look all that bad. But Spivak is a tall 25-year-old from Moldova. Will get those guillotines in there, has good triangle chokes as well, really uses his length well, and I think is going to look like a much more athletic guy in general than Felipe. I feel like Felipe, it could be one of those cannoneer guys where all of a sudden you're like, he's 185 pounds? Like, what? And all he says, he's like, I found out about nutrition and the weight just fell off. So
you know what I was realizing? Nuts were making me gain weight. Nuts.
One more time?
Nuts were making me gain weight. And it's a funny problem for a lesbian to have, is that I was eating too many nuts. I don't know why Felipe made me think of that, but I was thinking maybe he eats too many nuts.
We'll leave it at that. But interestingly enough, here with Spivak, he's got somewhat decent striking, at least the level to be able to stand with Felipe. I think on the ground, even though Spivak is not the black belt, he just looks like against more proven competition, he's done better. You can't trust this. We usually tell you guys to stay away from these on DraftKings and everything else for a reason. This one is ultra close for all the wrong reasons. I think Spivak has a better gas tank. Felipe really hasn't shown that he has much better of a gas tank. Big fat stay away. But I do feel like you have to have exposure on it, because I don't know if I necessarily see it going the distance. But then is it a heavyweight fight where it's like, no way this goes the distance? And then you get Ngannou Lewis.
Felipe or all Spivak fights, like, I'm over Spivak. I'm never picking him again. I don't think he's UFC caliber. I know he's only 25, but maybe he's one of those dudes that needs to step to a smaller organization for like 1 or 2, 3 fights, a few training camps, and then come back. So I'm going to take my chances with Felipe. I don't think Felipe's going to win by a decision, so I'm going to say knockout, round 1, but I'm going to stay away from it. I just don't like Spivak. So this is a play. And big MF, first time in the UFC, but it seems like if you're Brazilian, you just grow up like the same way as every kid plays tyke football or whatever it's called, whatever, Little League baseball. Every kid plays it. It seems like every kid does some form of fighting in Brazil. So give me the big kid, give me boy. And guys named Boy have a good, weird underdog.
Figgy boy?
Biggie boy and isn't your boy Anders. So I think as long as you get them as an underdog, your boys are going to pay off to be good. So I'm going to go with Felipe KO round 1. I might put it on one card, but I'm really just get on out of here, Spivak. No.
On DraftKings, you're going to pay for the slight favorite Spivak 8,400 against Philippe's 7,800. As I'm saying, I think this is an inside the distance. I actually have Spivak TKO round. Ugh. I got Spivak decision, even though I'm saying I don't think it's going to go to decision. But big fat stay away. That should tell you everything. But I'm going to have Spivak on a couple cards. In that, I'm going light this weekend. I got a pummel on Wednesday. Al Hassan put me in my place. Molly McCann showed me.
I only played the first time ever, or it's been the first time in a very long time since I learned how to use DraftKings. I only played change cards. Like, I only did like 25 cents, a couple of dimes. Like, I didn't even mess around. I did not mess around with this fight card. But I felt fight pick burnt. I felt like I went against... Because I've had to, with the Fight Pick Championships, once it got close to the end, it's like it went against my Fight Pick style. And I think it could have cost me points too, because I'm an underdog picker and there's been so many underdog fights. I just needed to like not give a fuck about my picks for a week. I don't even feel bad. I don't even know what my record is. I'm guessing I went like 3 of 11. I have no idea. You probably know. Do you have it in front of you?
I thought you went 6 of 12 or 6 of 11, as did I.
Oh.
I think we mirrored each other essentially.
I mean, you must have slayed in the beginning and I must have hit at the end.
I did so good at the beginning.
Because I was like, I don't even care. I just needed to, so I only played change cards. I don't know how I'm going to feel about tonight. I feel like I'm a little UFC burnt out. I don't know how I feel about this fight card, but with 2 little dudes like this in the main event, it's knowing what I know, I just don't understand how you can't play a couple of cards on DraftKings. This is more my style. This is more my style fight card. So anyways, first fight of the night, lap B-roll, big fat stay away. Would that have helped or hurt us last week? The stay away rule. I feel like you got it right?
Let me see who it was off of the top of my head. It feels so long ago at this point. It ended up being Jack Shore versus Phillips. So now everybody got that right. Everybody was.
I thought I had Phillips, or I thought I had the other dude
against Phillips
Jack
didn't
Shore.
Do it.
I know Phillips didn't, but I thought I had the other dude against Jack Shore. I was surprised when I looked at my card, but it was the first fight of the night, so I was like, I'm just going to listen to you here. I don't care. But I stayed away from it. It hurt me. Well, no, it didn't, because he was expensive.
He was expensive, one of the most expensive fighter of the night, but he did end up being on that optimal lineup. Jack Shore was. So he did pay off that, getting over 100 points for, I believe, 9-4 on DraftKings. So he was somebody that you had to be able to make room with, and a lot of people did that with Lazaz, Jojua. There was a couple other people in there that definitely...
That's what else everyone missed, how in love everyone is with Jojua.
That's what I was... Oh, yes. People are thirsting. All of a sudden, I mean, Reeboks was hot for a split second, and then Jojua comes in with them tits. I'm sorry, girl. I'm going to go there. Jesus.
I think Hebus is so cute. I just think she's... Hello.
I agree. I'm more of a Hebus guy myself.
Skills become sexy to me. So I'm also a person that can look at JJ and think she's an attractive person when she's doing her shit. Like, I like when people are doing whatever they're the best in the world at, whatever. I can even look at a stand-up comedian, and it might be Tom Segura or somebody when they're on stage, and I could be like, that is so attractive to me. When somebody's just in their gig.
Flow state.
Yeah.
Flow state is what we call it. So definitely in the flow state at 155 pounds, we're going to have Davi Ramos coming in against Arman Sarakian. This is a fight of the night potential. This is such a sneaky, fun, good fight. I can't believe that it's the second fight of the night. This is buried on the fucking prelims, and this should easily be the co-main event or even up there. This is just Sarukian coming in with a 14-2 record. You know how I love them hips. And this young man has more than enough of that, showing his outstanding wrestling, coming in on short notice against Makhachev and turning it into a close decision where arguably he's one of the few fighters that's actually looked good against Makhachev compared to a lot of his other opponents, landing almost double the amount of strikes that any other opponent has ever landed on Makhachev on 2 weeks' notice. So Sarukian looking good. Last beating Alban Mercier, the black belt, as well, 11 months ago. Sarukian comes in with the Tiger Muay Thai credentials. I know it says Kabuslav MMA in here, but he's a again Tiger Muay Thai guy who won the Tiger Muay Thai Rookie of the Year and got free training for a year. And there's a reason why. Sarukian can move in every position. Good striking, good kickboxing, great clinch. He's more of a wrestler boxer, and I don't even want to say necessarily that, but more in the sense as in Sarukian, we haven't seen go for submissions more instead of being on top and land punches. He's not trying to finish you in a submission. He's more down with landing ground strikes and just accumulating a finish in that sense, or even just out positioning you there, but really just showing strong, heavy hips into the third round against a fighter like Makhachev. So It's always going to stick out in my mind any single time I think of a prospect. Sarukian's in there. And against Davi Ramos, it's definitely a fun uphill battle that, well, maybe not necessarily uphill. Maybe more of a even plane. It's definitely less than Makhachev, but what we got with Ramos is a black belt, ADC standout, multiple finishes as far as a jiu-jitsu black belt. In the UFC, he's done well, beating Austin Hubbard in a decision, Gunther submission, which was the easiest fight to ever pick, beating Hein as well, and Grutzmacher. But all those fighters are has-beens, essentially. They're not necessarily going for any type of a title here. And at 33 years old, Ramos is just kind of plateaued. He stays the same. Nothing's ever changed. He has limited takedowns. Once he's on the ground, he's a demon, but really his takedowns are very Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu-esque, where he reaches and against the takedown.
He isn't a demon. He's a Tasmanian devil. Go on.
Oh, you're right. Absolutely right there. He is the devil. So Ramos, though, has to get this to the ground in order to be able to have an advantage, because striking, he's at a big disadvantage as well. He wings a lot of punches, and he wings them to try to get the takedown, but it's very one-dimensional. Sarukian has shown better takedown defense against better fighters. So I just see a decided decision here. I think Sarukian keeps it standing when he wants to. I don't think Sarukian goes to the ground. He's showed good enough fight IQ. Minus 205 favorite for a reason. I think the young man is going to just get another stepping stone on his way up the ladder. Definitely a fun prospect to watch. Davi Ramos is not going to turn over, though. He's going to give him a fight. So this is a fun one. Must watch UFC. Who do you think you have in this fight?
I think it's must-watch UFC if you're a fan of clinch work, ground game, wrist control, that kind of stuff. I think it's going to be that, and I think every time Tsarian can separate, he's going to, and I think he's going to have the far better hands. I think at his age, at 23, he has looked so good. You know, you had Nardiev, but you also said him. You just gave Nardiev all the love because he's white. Just kidding. I don't know what Tsarian is, but I love everything about Tsarian, and I think he's going to have better hands than Nardiev over the long game. He does put the whole entire thing together. Well-roundedness in UFC, especially being like 24, 23 years old. I love what you said about Davi Ramos. Like, we've seen what Davi is going to do. Nothing's going to change. This is what he is. It's awesome, but he has been fed cans in Brazilian fight cards, which you and I talk shit about it, that they're juicing to the tits. They're probably juicing at yas. But whatever. Give me Tsarian here. I have Tsarian decision, but I do think he can knock him out. I think his hands are going to be better than any of the tape we've seen yet on him. So I do think, I don't know why I don't look at this on any fights and think glass jaw for Ramos. Does he get hurt in a lot of his fights or something?
No, he's got a solid jaw. He's got a solid chin.
So I got Texarian decision. I think it's going to be a fun fight. I think Davey Hamas could get one round, or it'll be close. But I think Texarian. I think this is a comfortable decision, but it might only be like 60 points on the DK.
It is definitely, and I'm being a stickler, but the T is silent. So if you just think of Street Fighter, Saruken, that's how he pronounces it.
What one silent? What letter?
The T.
Oh, Saruken. Oh, easy.
Yeah, as soon as you take the T out, right, it changes the entire name.
I was telling my wife this. I was talking about us, and I noticed with names, there's Latin names that even if you don't know how to say them, or Spanish derivative names, and you give it a shot, you're a lot closer than me. And then there's certain like weird European Czechy names that I read a little better. And I was wondering, it was really a question that I had for her, that I was wondering that even if we don't know how to say things, whatever our customs are by the other things we have in our life, make some things a little easier. So it was just interesting to me with the fights. But so yeah, Sarukian.
And I am such a dweeb that I have started to pay attention. Not started, I've been doing it for a while. I do pay attention when I watch tape on how those announcers say the name, because I assume that they have told those announcers how to say the name.
You have gotten, I would say, 100, maybe 80% better since we first started doing the show on name pronunciation overall. And the only time you get fucked up now is when you look down to try to read it at the last moment.
Yeah, because I remember it more.
Yeah, you know it. You watched 10 tapes on the guy. You're like, you heard it a few times in your ear. So it's like the second you look down, and then when it blurs, you're like, fuck. Like,
yeah.
fuck. It's hard to like get it out of your head. It's like you have an earworm song.
So bad. So on DraftKings, back to the fight, we have Sarukian coming in at 8,000.
What are those stupid games you play when you go to a couple's house? Like Cranium?
Yes.
Okay. If Cranium at this point, if a last name was a category, I would say, you take this one. So
Thank
I'm
you.
Just saying. I'm just saying.
I try.
And we're always on a team together, and we always lose because MMA is not a category. MMA or conspiracy are a category.
We need to make one. We need to figure something out and make one of those, because I feel like we'd be up there. I mean, my
MMA board game? Why isn't that? Why isn't there an MMA board game?
MMA trivia, there is, but they're usually at bars. We need to do one online somehow.
Yeah, that's fun. That's like a fun group room that we could get a bunch of people in and just be like, oh, we meet every Tuesday nights, we have drinks, and we do MMA trivia. New normal. Sorry.
Absolutely. Hey, trying to be innovators out here. So, back to the fight with Sarukian being 8,700 against Ramos is 7,500. For a decision, in my eyes, 8,700 is going to be tough to get to. I don't see Ramos flopping over and just giving up the win. So I think I'm going to be ultra limited with 10% on Sarukian and 0 for Ramos. Other than a flash submission, I don't see Ramos winning this fight. Do you think you're going to be playing this one on DraftKings much?
If I probably play 4 to 5 cards, I'll put Sarukian on 1 or 2 of them. I am getting better at going heavy toward the ladder in the night, but I can't remember the last time I even broke even on. I feel like since the Fight Pick Championship started, my DraftKings it's like I used to not have a care about my picks, and I was like good at deciding points. Since I started to look at just who's going to win, it's like a game change. Because sometimes you can work your points out with a loser if you pick the guy who's still going to, or is it the significant strike number that's fucking me over?
The hard thing, and what we saw even on that Wednesday card, is what they consider a significant strike, because that was a factor that played over that weekend on DraftKings that hurt me. I had Gordon everywhere. He had over 200 strikes landed. They only gave him 44 significant strikes on DraftKings. What the fuck is that bullshit? Oh, I'm fired up. That double whiskey got me in.
I know. I'm gonna finish my whiskey back here because we did a whole show silent.
Absolutely.
That's like Charlie Chaplin. I was all like with my umbrella. But Mr. Anonymous said Trivial Pursuit MMA or Conspiracies Edition. That's what I'm talking about.
Both.
That's what I'm talking about. Then maybe we could beat our girls at a game once in a while. Seriously, I feel like we played 20 times against these two bitches and we won one time.
Oh.
I don't get it. But spelling is not our front room, our forte.
Absolutely not. But hey, get me with a critical thinking challenge. We'll figure that out real quick. But either way, we're back on to 125 pounds where we have a dirty.
I wish one of them was a wrestling challenge and then we'd take one or two.
2-on-1. Easy.
I know. I'd be like, you got this one. I'll make the clay. I'll do the clay figures and you wrestle.
So we got a disgusting, a dirty, adorable debut in Malcolm Gordon coming in against Amir Albazi. Albazi, the Prince, coming in with a 12-1 record, only losing to Jorge Shorty Torres in a Brave Championship decision. That was actually a really interesting bout. Ended up watching a lot of tape on both of these young men.
Do you know what they call Torres? His nickname?
What is that?
Street Jesus.
I think it's Shorty, but whatever.
Oh, okay.
So I like it. But either way, here, the 26-year-old fighting out of Sweden, fighting out of Shoot Fighters, is definitely shows that he comes in with a wrestling game, has a few submissions in there. Well-rounded is the Prince in there. I like what I saw is he didn't look like he had any glaring holes. He's just serviceable everywhere. If he sees a submission, he'll jump on it. So his fight IQ seems to be fairly there in some of his fights. It's just been it's not UFC caliber. There is a Bellator bout in there against a 6-2 fighter. I like what I'm seeing from the young man. He just definitely needs to grow a little bit. Not even needs to grow a little bit. He's going to have the perfect challenge in Malcolm Gordon here, who's also potentially not UFC caliber at 30 years old, being 4 years the elder. The Canadian fighter is on a 4-fight winning streak. The 12-3 fighter has actually got interesting striking with a ground game that has evolved quite a bit. Was hearing that his camp a few years ago fell apart and they all kind of turned from striking into submission guys, and it's kind of been turmoil-ish, and this fighter, Malcolm Gordon, has had kind of a mix-up and not necessarily the best training camp, where Aziz, or the Prince there, has had a bit better of a training camp. But regardless, what I saw with Gordon was good striking, good ground game, weak body, ultra weak body. Multiple fighters kept hurting him to the body, and if I'm seeing any type of tape, that's immediately what I'm going for, where I almost thought it was a TKO in one of his last fight against Shuratov. Hurt him with a body kick, folded over, almost got submitted, reverses the fight, gets on the back, rear naked chokes him. Just unbelievable. Gordon has that dog in him, but there is openings at time with some of his striking. But it's not bad. He's somewhat powerful. He has a beautiful 17-second finish where he switches into a double jab, left hook, all on the same hand, and knocks his opponent clear out. Michael Jordan, I think it was specifically, he knocked out. But Gordon...
Good, that guy deserves it. Probably had something to do with his father's death. Go on.
So either way, Malcolm Gordon here is definitely a live dog. He's got the more flash potential. I think the more grinder is Amir, the Prince, in here. I think he's the more wrestling type of just get you on the ground and outposition you for 3 rounds, where Malcolm Gordon is he's the intangible. He's the guy who will throw up a triangle, and not only a triangle, he'll go to a triangle, to an omoplata, to a reverse kind of omoplata darts. Just beautiful stuff I saw on the ground from Gordon. It's just
Is it
that
beautiful
durability
because
for
it's
Gordon.
against such low caliber dudes?
You're right there. You're absolutely right there. But the fact that he's going for it shows a level of confidence that I like. But
if you got on
I
the
like
ground with me,
wrestlers.
you would be able to. People would be like, "Yeah, that's Damian Maya."
True.
He is Damian Maya. I don't even like. Maybe it's just horrible. I don't know anything about these guys. I'm just looking at their pictures, and I feel like Malcolm Gordon is breathing with his mouth open in the picture. Like he looks winded in the actual photo. So I'm gonna give the gas tank to Albazi. I feel like Amir Albazi. I've seen him before. I thought he was in the UFC. It's weird. He looks so familiar. I'm like, are they using somebody else's picture? But maybe it's Bellator that I saw him in. I got him going to decision. I think everywhere that Gordon's really schlick with submissions, Albazi's gonna kind of handle it there. And I think if he can make it past the first round, it'll be like 29-28 decision Albazi. The thing that I was going to ask you, I have a few questions. Do you think it's weird that both these guys are fighting in the 125 from 135 in their previous fights?
Usually we do this later on in the week, but in these uncertain times, we already got to watch weigh-ins, and they both made weight, and they both didn't look bad on weight. So that the fact that they're both compromised essentially, I think evens itself out. But they don't necessarily look that big as well in there when I watched all the tape. Like they look like they could make 25 and it would just be, a little literally both of them. But out of the two, Gordon does look like the more athletic, leaner, muscular guy to me.
Which makes me think he's going to burn out quicker.
Yeah, and you're right there.
And
right
especially cutting down for the first time if this is. But I do like that the UFC is putting both these guys on at 125. We're seeing a championship kind of fight at 125. It's not, but it's Benavidez, Figueiredo too. But it will
be later. Yeah,
it will be later. Oh, it is for the belt essential right now?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
Oh, I'm sorry. I like that they're building this division again. I like that it's not a step away. Like Henry Cejudo's like, I saved that division, I think there's a lot to be shown here. And if anything, it's sometimes you can give a young guy an opportunity that eventually he's going to gain more weight. He's going to be a 135er. But, look who we've seen down at 125. Look at Cejudo now. If he didn't get his start at 125, he might have been lost at 135. And we never saw Henry Cejudo again. But we actually got to see him resurge and become a champion off a loss. And that's what I want to see in UFC. I don't want to see guys that just, I never lose a fight, now I carry the belt. I don't like that. I like a guy that I've got to watch lose a couple of times, and now I'm like with them on their journey in whatever little tiny little way as a fan that you are with them on their journey. So yeah, whatever. Malcolm Gordon, I do like your flash potential. If there's going to be a quick submission, I like Malcolm Gordon's strength, let it dry in the first. Other than that, Albazi decision.
Actually going to go submission round number 1, Gordon. So,
I love it.
It's one of those guys that, hey, I had Kama Worthy against who's Pena there as well. So I didn't see that submission coming out, but they're both debuting fighters. There's a lot of intangibles. I think you can't take a shot on either one of these guys, especially on DraftKings for the slight favorite. Al-Balaziz, the Prince in there, 8,600 against Gordon, 7,600. Do you think you're going to be playing the Prince in there for 8,600 untested?
No, I don't know either guy well enough.
I am going to take a shot for that cheap. I'm going to be going in that 10 to 20% range for Gordon, just because I do think that if he gets it, he's going to score high. The Prince in there, I see a decision as well as you do. I think it goes one way, or it's decision, the Prince, or Gordon gets the finish.
Muscles out the stronger submission. If Albazi feels comfortable at all while Gordon's strong, he's going to get caught, I think.
I absolutely love that. So I'm taking kind of, the punt play. I'm taking the the guy who has the higher ceiling for me, because I don't see Amir getting the finish out of both fighters. But again, the intangibles are high in this one. It's definitely going to be guys that we're going to see later at 125, and I really like both of these guys as additions. So sit back and watch, enjoy that one. We're going to move on to 135 pounds.
Before we move on, I just want to give a quick shout out to Neil the Security. He's not too late. We're still in the prelims. There's plenty of fight breakdowns and shit talking to do. And also, we didn't give a shout out to World Winning Federation at the beginning, who is the OG man, who I'm surprised he even has time to stop by a small little podcast like us and remind us that our sound's not on after we go. And if we would have saw it right at the beginning, he would have told us our sound was on. I was just so into conversation with you that I didn't look down. So I want to give a shout out that for the champ to stop by Lat B and tell them their sound's not on. We're doing good things. So,
for that matter, at Chris B 711 _ 711, thank you as well, informing us that our audio was down. We appreciate it. Thank you for listening along and going along for the ride as we talk about this crazy fight week that we've had. I mean, essentially, it's International Fight Week. We're getting it in Yas Island and Yas Queen. It's been a heavy week.
Yes, Queen!
So then we move on to 135 pounds, where we have Brett Johns coming in against Montel Jackson.
This could be the fight of the night to me.
This is also one that I'm surprised is buried down at the prelims. This can definitely be a contender for fight of the night. Montel Jackson coming in with a 9-1 record, a 3-fight winning streak, only losing to Hickey Simone, making some big changes in there in the UFC, beating Kelleher, beating Sohamthath. Who else in there? Beating Corrales in a decision. Montel always has the honor of having the biggest hands in the UFC. Biggest gloves. So, take that for what it's worth.
He's lucky I'm not in the UFC. Look at these things.
Look at those. Jesus. Careful.
I can't put my burnt one up. And I told my conspiracy friend about it, and I was like, I burnt my whole hand. And they were like, well, why don't you eat? I know. They said, why don't you eat the pain? That's deep. Okay, sorry.
That is deep. So, Jackson coming in with great striking, definitely fast hands in here, solid takedown defense on the ground. He's shown us on the front headlock series. He's really good with the front choke and that darce just because he slips in those arms really deep in there, but showing that he's got it in his gas tank, which was that issue against Simone, under control, and has really been putting together a solid, even though it was Corrales, he was a decided favorite in that. I think Corrales showed up a lot more than people didn't expect, but I also think that Jackson answered that call. Like, he was supposed to be upset if Jackson stayed the same, and Jackson's like, nah, I need to get better everywhere, and he's steadily been doing that. And against Brett Johns, it's a really interesting matchup. The 16-2 fighter is coming off of a win to Tony Gravely in a submission rear naked choke 5 months ago. Prior to that, losing the Munoz decision, losing the Sterling, but looking at that now, that's higher competition level than what Montel Jackson's been fighting. Beating Soto in that calf slicer. Brett Johns it's definitely a grappler. He wants to get it to the ground. He has a good single leg takedown. Will switch to a double in there, and off of his back throws up a lot of crafty stuff, has some really good sweeps and stuff. As far as being a Welsh fighter, we don't really like to think of them as being good ground and offensive guys, but Brett Johns is one of those few exceptions that shows that he went against the grain and didn't turn into a Bisping. He's like, no, that we can do it all, and has proven that on the ground, he's somebody that's tough to deal with. But here I feel like Brett Johns' entries, even though they're solid, Montel Jackson has shown better takedown defense against the same level of opponent.
This is how we do it.
Every time. Brett Johns, though, I feel like he leaves openings in his striking with that calf kick, and both Munoz and Sterling both exploited that. Obviously, his last opponent didn't, but that was a much lower level in Gravely. I think Jackson's good enough to be able to really kick those legs apart, beat him striking, and keep it off of the ground and win a decision decidedly, if not get a later round finish, maybe in that 2 or 3. I think the Pikey Johns gives a good showing of himself, but I do think it's going to be a little bit too much. Minus 200, I honestly think is right about right, because it's a pretty big deficiency that John has to make up in that striking for me. What do you think you're going to end up taking in this one?
Brett Johns never does anything to get himself points. He's one of those guys that he's just like, he puts himself in the way. He has decent takedown defense. He goes for kind of scrambles sometimes. Most of the times they're stuffed, and then he stands back with his hands, and they're not that great. I think Brian Kelleher is a lot better version of Brett Johns than Brett Johns is, and I think Montel Jackson has figured out the puzzle of Brian Kelleher. And for me to say I love Boom, I know he gets hated by some people, but I love Boom. So for him to figure that out and kind of move on, like the Sohampathy, the Kalaris, whatever, and then I think both these guys have taken like steep competition and then kind of fluff fights toward the end. So I'm interested in them to see each other. If Brett Johns has a chance here, it's kind of a late submission to me. I like that he went to a decision with Aljo. It says that he's tough. I don't think he's going to get finished here. But I do think that Montel Jackson will just do enough, stuff enough of the takedowns out of desperation when Brett Johns tries to go for them. And then if everything significant strikes, Montel Jackson can lay significant strikes. So give me Jackson decision. I think Brett Johns is enough to handle it. I also think he's one of those weird soft skin guys that he's going to show this fight. And these judges seem to, I think some of the fights are off a little bit, and I think some of it might be damage. So, and do you notice too, we didn't discuss this, and we didn't discuss it, I don't think we didn't do the fights at the round table. Dude, the ref who kept standing in the, is this how we fight in Yas? We only let them
versus, right.
But I felt like it was so many fights. I was like, I felt like the dude was uneducated in grappling, which if I put myself in that shoes a few years ago, I would understand. But I'm like, they're doing shit. Are you kidding me? Like, it would just be like leg dominance or wrist control or break. And you're like, are you kidding? It took that dude like a fifth of this round to get that position, and you just broke it from him. That lets me know, if I see it where I give myself like I'm a C level, maybe even D+ grappling, where I understand it, I'm like, dude, you got to go back to school for that. So I was getting infuriated. That was one of the number one things I remembered about last fight. So we're going to talk about Yas. Heat isn't an issue. It's inside. It's in the auditorium. We always give like, do we have to worry about sea level? Do we have to worry about these things? I think we're going to have to worry about grappling strong guys, getting the opportunity to work. And the people that aren't showing up, I bet you Molly McCann in an interview, yeah, she got her ass handed to her a little bit, but time of them having to turn on at 4 a.m. or whatever time the fights start, that is fucked. I realized it about myself this morning, like just trying to move a heavy piece of equipment that I would have been able to move 100 times, but it was just too early. And it was like, whoa, I'm not warmed up. So those are the two things that I would put in. So the grappling heavy guys. So if Brett Johns is going to try to go for those with Montel, if Montel can lock up and have enough defense, he's going to get broken up before he's going to get taken down. So anyway.
DraftKings, you're going to end up paying $9,100 for the decided 200 favorite Jackson against John, $7,100 on DraftKings. Do you think you're going to be playing Johns anywhere in this spot?
What is the average points of them?
So Jackson has an average of 90 points on DraftKings against Brett Johns, 76 points.
You know what the weird thing is? Brett Johns is one of those weird guys. I don't know if I've ever bet against him. But Montel Jordan is one of those weird guys. I don't know if I've ever bet against him. And there are two guys I've gotten to play as underdogs for a while, so I hate that they're fighting right now. I just got to go with Montel Jackson here. I think quick. has everything. I think he's getting to this peak age. I like the progression that I'm seeing of his game plan going on. This is going to be a test of his cardio more than anything. But I think he has it. I think he has all 3 rounds. Decision. Yeah, I'll play. I'll play Jackson. This is the other thing too. Brett Johns is one of those durable dudes. It'll allow Montel Jackson to lay those kind of points out.
So that's what I was about to say. So even in this fight, it's going to be steep because we decision here. So he really has to have the amount of output out there to be able to pay off that 9-1. So I'm actually going to be low owned to Jackson in this spot. I don't necessarily think he's going to be able to pay that off. He averages right in that range. I think Johns is going to be the loser regardless, so I don't see an option there. I feel like I'm going to be under. If there's any exposure to this, it's Jackson. I don't see, Johns taking it as much as most lines do. So I'm going to be fairly backing off of this. I on DraftKings, we got to get the finishes. We can't even go for the Jared Gordons anymore that out-wrestle you.
I'm going to have the Jackson here for me. Montel, if I play 4 cards, I'm going to put him on 2. If I play 5, I'm going to put him on 3. It's just, I know him. I trust his game. And for me, it's about trust. And maybe that's not paying off because sometimes I used to take the chances on the flashes. But, yeah, Montel Jackson. Is there a tank starting? I feel like, or is there a drag race about to go down my street? I don't know if you can hear it.
So, moving on to 155 pounds, we have Joel Alvarez coming in against Joe Duffy. Joel Alvarez being 16-2, losing in the UFC to Damir Ismagulov in the decision, then getting a win off of his last fight against Bernardo TKO ground and pound a year ago. Alvarez is a Spanish fighter who uses his grappling to really win fights over. Definitely is a submission type of ground game guy, but when he did fight somebody with an actual ground game in Ismagulov, it just kind of showed how much of a discrepancy the Spanish fighter is as to Russian, maybe potentially even some American wrestlers. It's just Alvarez has got a solid base, but he just hasn't had the level of competition. But in here against Joe Duffy, the 16-4 fighters coming off a 2-fight losing streak, last losing to the Kessie to decision, and James Vick via TKO, beating Renzo Madadi, beating Mitch Clark, losing to Poirier. Joe Duffy is definitely at 32. I feel like also shown his potential, as we were talking about earlier with Ramos. I feel like we know what we're getting with Duffy. He's always going to have that Conor McGregor win in his background, which is what he'll talk about in literally pretty close to every interview. But
I need to Conor McGregor.
Yeah, was that one time I got him in a heel hook? Okay, good. What have you done for me lately? And against at-level competition, he's been
on that drop when we have a button. It's going to be the Janet Jackson song, What Have You Done For Me Lately? And at the beginning of that song, before it drops, she says something like, you used to be good to me, but what have you done for me lately? And it's like really long and drawn out, but I'm going to press it every time we say it. Anyway, you'll have to remind me once we're getting drops.
Joe Duffy tends to like the box in there, but he will show some nasty Darce guillotine chokes in there on the ground. Is more than serviceable. His boxing, though, even though we like to think it's crisper than it is, he gets hit a little more than I would like to hope in there, and he leaves limited openings. His gas tank isn't as good as I always like to think. He will give up a lot of takedowns and go for that guillotine and not get it. Of course, we remember when he does, but we forget all of the attempts at times, and he'll slowly give away a fight without being able to make adjustments in there. Against Joel Alvarez, though, I feel like he has not as big as an advantage as they're saying here at minus 355. I do feel like this line is off. Joe Duffy, I don't think is making a run for the belt, even for the top 10. I think he's bordering in the top 15 range. Joel Alvarez is a young dog who's on his way up and looking to make big changes right now, or making to look big jumps in his career. He's making big changes, but I can't bet him right now, and I can't bet Joe Duffy for that matter. I got a decision. I think it stays up standing, and they just kind of what is it, kickboxing match it out. I'm going to give the slight advantage to Duffy, but I don't see a finish. I'm going to probably end up staying away from this one on the betting lines. It's off. The line's off. Joe Duffy is not that good of a fighter. What do you think you're going to take?
I think he's a good fighter, and I think he's UFC caliber. He's just like a decision fighter to me. I don't think it's bad that he lost to Cassie, but it's been a year and 4 months, dude. What do I know about you right now? What have you changed while you were in camp? Was it just off for injuries? Are you desperate for money right now? What kind of body am I going to get with you coming in here? I don't have any tangible baseline with Joe Duffy. So with Joe Alvarez, it's like the age tells me he's hungry. It's a Spain fighter. They don't have a lot going on right now, if anything. So you're going to put him in here. He's a huge underdog. He has everything to prove. I'm picking Duffy decision, but I'm rather the upset. Like, I have no invested interest in Joe Duffy in the UFC unless he comes in and it's some insanity. Like, we see some little bit of switch of Duffy's game plan. Otherwise, he just doesn't. It's been a long time since I've been excited about Joe Duffy. So, yeah, it'd be interesting, but the crazy part is, let's give Joe Duffy a W on his next fight and move forward. I'm going to say, who's Joel Alvarez? So give me Duffy decision, but I'd rather Joel Alvarez come out and slay. But I'm going to stay away from this everywhere because I don't trust. I don't know anything. I don't like a year and 4 months off. That's 16 months out of the octagon.
Absolutely. And there, Joe Duffy being the minus 350 favorite on DraftKings is going to be 9,300 against Joel Alvarez, 6,900. One of the bigger favorites of the night is Duffy. But on DraftKings, an average of 61 points for Duffy. There's no way I'm putting him on my DraftKings. Maybe not no way, maybe that's like 10%. But even then, I feel like there's other options.
I might 1-1 them. I might 1-1 them.
I could see having much more exposure at 69 to give me that relief for other fighters in Alvarez. So if there's a play, it's dog or pass. It's got to be Alvarez. I got a decision, Duffy, but probably a stay away.
I 100% agree.
Then we move on to a catch weight bout at 150 pounds. We have Grant Dawson coming in against Nad Narimani. I was talking about the coach for Chimaev being Nad Narimani or someone in that reign being at All-Stars, and it wasn't. That was Mad Dog that I was talking about. I was getting him confused with the English fighter, Nad Smiler Narimani. Narimani coming in with a 12-3 record, coming off of a loss to Mike Grundy TKO punches a year ago. Prior to that, beating Dos Santos, beating Taha as well, and Pimblett. We get a alpha male fighter who just kind of shows us a solid grappling acumen with serviceable striking, but no real knockout power, and a solid gas tank. Narimani is somebody who will stay in the fight and grind you out if you show those inconsistencies, such as Pimblett and Taha. Like, in those third rounds, in that gut check time, Narimani was able to still mount takedowns, stay in top control, and keep throwing punches. But on the feet, I mean, it's a solid 1-2s with a check hook here and there, but there's no real big changes. It's usually just trying to get the fight to the ground. And Grant Dawson, the Glory MMA fighter, is the prophet for a reason. He's come out and just a 15-1 record, blown through all expectations, coming off of the Contender Series, winning off a submission, beating Julian Erosa in a decision, beating Terzano a submission, Mina in a decision. Grant Dawson has really proven that he can go all 3 rounds hard and be dangerous in all positions. That Julian Erosa fight, what I loved watching back about it was, even though Dawson wasn't able to get the submissions he was searching for, he put on so much pressure that he just kept advancing position, landing strikes, just constantly kept moving and just kind of outworking guys that are able to go a full 3 rounds solidly. Trezano's one of those guys as well, and he got caught in a triangle choke. But I feel like the strength for Narimani is to get this fight to the ground, and you don't want to do that against Grant Dawson. Dawson's striking is a little open at times, but it's always to get to the ground as well. If there's a shot for Nirmani, he's got to keep it up and away, keep it in the striking distance. But I just think Dawson crashes in so hard, moves forward so much that it's inevitable. He throws 4 or 5 punch combinations to just get on the hips to move to the leg to get that. Even if he goes to his back, does Grant Dawson, he knows he's good enough to sweep and get on top, and he's proven that time and time again. There's a reason he's a decided favorite here. I think Grant Dawson eventually gets a submission. I'm going to go round number 2. I could move it to 3 because Nirmani is not going to be a slouch in there. Nirmani's going to put up a fight. So I definitely like Dawson here. I don't know how much exposure I'm going to have to Nirmani. Who do you think you're taking in this one?
I like Nad Nirmani, and even on a double loss after this fight, I'm still going to like Nad Nirmani going forward. I just think Grant Dawson's one of those guys that if he would be a stock that you could have gotten as a penny stock, and now it's sitting there. It's not quite a blue chip, but it is looking really good, and he's on no one's radar. I like everything you said about him. I love the way he puts things together. I think the guys that are taking it to the next level of like UFC now, they have to have some kind of wrestling base. I hate to give it to like TJ and Dom Cruz. Those are the 2 guys that I always think about of being able to put together like a 3-punch combination to a takedown so well in my head where it's just like, especially TJ. I always felt like his takedown was like a punch. It never went easy if TJ took you down. It was like a setup to a hard ass takedown. Grant Dawson's doing those kind of things. In every single fight, we're watching him like working leg kicks a little more, working inside elbows a little more. I love everything you said. I had submission round 3, and as you were talking, I moved it up to round 2. So I got Dawson submission round 2. And this is nothing against Narimani. I think this is a real fight. I'm going to like Narimani going forward on this. But
totally agreed on that. On DraftKings, you're going to end up paying for the minus 260 favorite. Grant Dawson, 9,200 against Nat Nirmani, 7,000 even. It's going to be hard for me to shell up for an average of 65 points for Nirmani. 7,000, even though he should be value there. There's just too many check marks for Dawson. He averages 106 points. So
that could be your captain. That could be your captain. How much is Grant Dawson right now?
9,200.
He, to me, has more proven that he should be higher ranked than some of the fighters that it's like, hey, this guy in the UFC, we've never seen him before. Let's put him up in the 9,000s. Grant Dawson's doing everything right. Right. I trust him with my money a little more. I might have him on like half my cards.
He's one of those guys that I'm going to want to put those other
wherever I can afford him.
Right. He's the guy I'm going to want to pay up for, and so that I could definitely level up my card somewhat, because I do think he's going to be in that over 90% range as far as where the points. He just tends to have that much output in general.
And I'm going to say ahead of time, this is the last fight of the preliminary card, the main event of the prelims. I'm going to stop the stream after this, and you and I will retake up in about 3 minutes after we finish this fight. When you say drop the business, I'm going to stop the stream and then restart, because I have really liked the main event separate streams.
Okay.
So
I love that, because I got to pee.
All right, bring it down.
So back to 205 pounds, we have a debuting fighter coming in at 205 pounds. Roman Dolezis coming in against Khadij Ibragimov.
You look down.
Dolezis 6-0, perfect pro record in MMA, beating 13-3 fighters in the WWFC over in Georgia. The Georgian fighter does have some limited experience, but interestingly enough, this Georgian fighter popped. He got signed about 2 years ago as well. He popped for steroids, and he was like, yeah, it's legal in my country. I've been on steroids for years at 32 years old, for over 5 years. Here's all of my medication. Here's all of my doctors. And USADA was like, really? Cool. Okay, thanks. we'll only give you a year layoff. And then, hey, here's a fight as soon as his layoff's over. So that's right now for Dolaziz. But in those 6 prior fights that he had, I was
Speaking of
able to watch.
USADA, did you hear
Yes.
how they told everyone in Yas that they were going to be off of USADA, and then they woke up Volkanovski in the middle of the fucking night?
Not only Volkanovski, a bunch of other fighters, they woke up in the middle of the night. And they were like,
Hashtag
come on,
horseshit.
motherfucker. The fight night before the fight? Come on.
I
man.
want to see the best version of my fucking fighters in there.
Yep.
Don't fuck
Yep.
with it, USADA, or I don't need you anymore. Sorry.
I agree. If you do it the 24 hours before, do it at 6 a.m. Do it at 7, 8, 9 in the morning. Don't do it at 3 a.m.
No,
when you're
at
trying
that
to get
last
an
72
8-hour
hours, you can
Yeah,
interrupt
man.
them in the gym. You can interrupt them every time. I feel like those guys are so many places. You can stop them right off when they're done with press. There's so many places you can test
Sure.
those guys. And I
did
know,
hear that. And
I just think it's horseshit. I want the best version of my fighters. So I don't want them to be fucked with. And I don't want one fighter to be fucked with and not the other. And I don't want either to be fucked with. But that really pissed me off for Volkanovski. I'm sorry. But I'm looking at Roman Dolid's tits. Dolaziz. His big hairy tits. I got Dolaziz knockout round 1 because Ibragimov, I'm like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Not UFC caliber, dude. So give me the other dude. I'm not going to go heavy.
Love saying cutting me to the pass there. I love it. Well, for Dolaziz, he comes in swinging. This motherfucker swings against the competition he has been fighting. He does what he's supposed to do. And that's knock them suckers out. But again, it's not UFC competition. It's not UFC level. He has shown, though, that when he gets extended a little bit, he slows down quite a bit. But does Brugimov in there, who also has popped for steroids in his career at 8-2, last losing to Jung, which was a nasty upset, and Herman as well 8 months ago, really just showed us what Agrabimov does in there. He ends up throwing in that fight that he lost to Jung. He threw over 100 strikes in the first round. Like, the reason that, and he does only have 1 round type of cardio, 3 minutes, if I'll say at that, does Ibragimov. But he throws the kitchen sink at you. He throws body shots to head shots and doesn't stop. And if you can't take it, he will get you out of there. It's whether Dolaziz can take it. He hasn't seen an opponent that's willing to do this. So I like what you're saying. I think that Dolaziz is a live dog in here. And actually, a lot of people have Dolaziz winning this. They think that he's going to probably extend it. But I think there's a shot to be made in Ibragimov. I think I'm going to take him TKO round number 1.
Woo!
If it goes after round 1, live betting, get all over Dolaziz, Roman in there, because he's going to win this fight. But if he doesn't get out of that first round, Ibragimov is a live underdog. Give me the plus 150 underdog in here. I think I'm going to have to play this card just because, as we were saying, we see it being a finish, right? Or do you have a decision?
I have Dolaziz finished too. I'm going to go late on both guys, 1-1 on both guys.
So, on DraftKings, you're going to end up paying for the debuting fighter, Dolaziz, $8,900 against Ibragimov's $7,300. The values on Ibragimov, I'm going to be playing him in a few spots here. Probably in that 30% because I see him being a good amount of salary relief. 10% Dolaziz. But I need exposure to this fight. I feel like this fight's going to be a finish. Neither guy is going to go all 3 rounds.
Agree. This fight's not going to decision. Famous last words. But same bad time, same bad channel. I will let you say the magic words, but we will be back and it's 7:36 now. So 7:40 we'll be starting the live stream of the main card.
To the business.